Good afternoon, everybody. The Music Fan is here bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. Now, bear in mind the noise outside. They're doing a little bit of construction in my area, and I'm going to try to push through it, so hopefully you can as well. I hope everyone is staying safe and warm after the nor'easter and the hurricane around the East Coast, and I am back with another Are You In, this time talking about another top 10 album of the year so far that I talked about in June in one of my videos. I've talked about it, but I never got a time to do a full-on review. And I believe when I talked about it, this album just came out. So now that I have more time listening to it, I know for a fact this is in my top 10, at least for now. So without stalling anymore, I'm going to be talking about A Dying Machine by Tremonti. Now, if you don't know Tremonti, they are a thrash metal, speed metal, alt metal, hard rock, post-grunge band from Orlando, Florida. Members include Mark Tremonti on lead and rhythm guitar and lead vocals, Eric Freeman on rhythm and lead guitar, backing vocals, and bass guitar, and Garrett Whitlock on drums and percussion. Their previous albums include All I Was in 2012, Cauterized in 2015, and Dust in 2016. Now, if the name Mark Tremonti rings any bells to you, it's because he is known as the lead guitarist for two bands before that, Creed and Alter Bridge. Creed, of course, being one of the more popular, if you will, bands from the early 2000s, with songs like Higher, My Own Prison, My Sacrifice, just a lot of really, really good songs. It's definitely one of my guilty pleasures, if you will. I know a lot of their songs are cheesy. I know Scott Stapp is kind of a joke when it comes to a vocalist, but what was shown on these albums is that Mark Tremonti and the arrangements are really good, and it showed that he was a blossoming guitarist in the field. I think he's still one of the most underrated guitarists, if not the most underrated guitarist of the 2000s going forward. He got a chance to show a little bit more with Alter Bridge, which is basically Creed with Miles Kennedy. And the first album wasn't great. One Day Remains, it's the most cliched album out of all of them, if you will. But there's still some really good hits on there. One Day Remains, Open Our Eyes, and ones that show not just Miles Kennedy's guitar work, but also Tremonti's guitar work. And it just keeps getting better over the years. Songs like Blackbird, one of the best metal songs of all time off of Blackbird, and a lot of really good songs off of that one to begin with. AB3 showing a lot more progression, Fortress showing even more progression, and also showing on both Fortress and AB3 that Tremonti can sing. And he gets a little bit more as time goes on. I don't think there is as much on The Last Hero, but I think it's the most proficient that he sounds, especially on Show Me a Leader. It's just an amazing solo on there. And Tremonti's solo work is nothing to sniff at either. All I Was, Cauterized, and Dust are some of my favorite metal albums over the years. All I Was in my top 25 of 2012. Cauterized would have been in my top 50 if I had done one. And Dust was in my top 5 of 2016, which I actually did talk about if you want to look at my top 10 albums of 2016 from a long time ago with my friend Josh. I can explain a little bit more as to why that one is so good to me. But I think what makes him so interesting is not just his proficiency on the guitar, but his interesting arrangements. It definitely showed a lot on Dust. I think All I Was is his blossoming into that idea, but Dust and Cauterized show a lot more of what he can do as a guitarist and as an arranger and as a leader of a band. So when I heard that he was putting out an album this year, and not just him but Miles Kennedy, both putting out albums and concept albums at that, I was super excited. I've already listened to Miles Kennedy's one a lot. It's definitely in my top 10. The Year of the Tiger, if you've not listened to it, check it out. But after listening to this over and over and over again, this one is also in my top 10. But let me tell you a little bit more why it's that good. First off, I can't really say much about the concept. The concept itself is also talked about in a book that he wrote, and I haven't read it yet, so I don't want to say too much without putting my foot in my mouth for saying something wrong. But from what I understand, it's a war between cyborgs and humans, I want to say. Like, they made these killing machines that are supposed to take down humanity, but I think some of them uprise and try to take over the Legion that is using these bots to kill humans. That's what I am understanding. I think there's some plot ideas of human and cyborg relationships and stuff like that, and I don't understand everything, but what I say, it's a very interesting concept, and I think there's a lot of good songs that have a lot of good lyrics. My favorites being Bringer of War, A Dying Machine, Throw Them to the Lions, Make It Hurt, The First to the Last, a lot like Sin, and As the Silence Becomes Me. I think all of them have solid lyrics, but I don't want to delve much into it, because instead, I want to spend a little bit more time on the music, and my god, is the music awesome. Now, this being a thrash metal and heavy metal and hard rock album, you're going to get a lot of everything. A lot of the thrash metal ideas start with Bringer of War, where it starts with this very sinister half-step chord progression at the beginning, which is quiet, and then the drums come in, and it feels like exactly what is happening. Like this army is coming in to destroy everybody, and when the thrash riff picks up, it feels like there's total carnage, especially when you get these dissonant chords right at the beginning of it. And that thrash idea stays throughout most of the song, but it does change up a little bit. In the second half of the verse, you get a more fast-paced riff with a more open drumming progression, and the chorus is awesome. The bridge is killer. It starts with just the guitar itself, and then an awesome solo comes in. There's an awesome outro. The harmonies are great, and it's showing what Tremonti can do as an arranger. And then the hard-hitting stuff doesn't stop there. You get something like Throw Them to the Lions, which is maybe the fastest song on the album, if not the second fastest. From start to finish, you get some intense thrash riffs, a guitar solo that's really awesome, a really hard-hitting breakdown, and the melodies are really fun and interesting. The Day When Legions Burns is another really fast-paced barn burner of a song. So much energy, guitar riffs, the drumming is really cool, the vocals are good, the solid harmonies, and even a flat 2 chord at the end of the chorus every time to make for some interesting harmonies. I will say that the bridge work isn't as interesting, but the outro is has one of the best solos on the album. And then another one, Take You With Me, maybe the most simplistic of these thrash songs, but it's still a very catchy song, and the first song that came off the album. Now, I will say that I was worried when I first heard this, because I was worried that he was going to be a little bit more simplistic than usual, but I think that this one works in comparison to everything else, because it's a breath of fresh air in terms of simplicity, and it shows that he can still make some interesting ideas when he is doing this simplistic idea. There's an interesting bridge idea, there's a awesome guitar solo that ends on the 9th, on the last note of the song. There's some great harmonies, there's a really good melody line in the verse, and even shows off the range that Tremonti has been able to get over the years, where now he's on a high B at points. So some very hard-hitting, fast-paced songs, but then you get some slower ones, like A Dying Machine, my favorite one on the album, that builds a lot over the time. There's this very sinister 3/4 feel with the verse riff using a lot of do, ra, and te. And then there's some arpeggiated pre-chorus ideas with some awesome harmonies in the chorus. And I've noticed something. I really like the harmonies on this, but I've also noticed that he uses this idea a lot. I remember a lot of it on Cauterize and a lot of it on Dust, where he uses the 7, where it's going, "You're a dying machine," and then it goes up to the do, "You're a dying machine." So it's this idea that he uses a lot, but still it's catchy as all hell. And then the intensity lowers a little bit in the bridge, where it's a little bit more noodling, a little bit more arpeggiated work, and it's beautiful. And then it builds into these more dissonant chords at like Walking in a Nightmare and Never Changing, Never Done, just showing the panic and the fear in this song. And the outro is awesome. It's my favorite song on the album, but it's not necessarily because it's head and shoulders above everything else. I think it takes a lot of the ideas on this album and does it best. A song like Trapes, I want to say, Traipse, if anyone knows how to pronounce that, I have no idea. I didn't even know it was a word until I saw this song. I thought it was trapeze. It is not. It's another one of these sinister, slow-paced songs, but the nice thing that happens in this song is that it contrasts very well with the chorus ideas. The chorus isn't the most technical part, but the build is very nice on this, and the harmonies are very dissonant at times. The drums are really full of life, and there's a solo at the bridge that brings this up a little bit more intensity before it dies down again. The first and last, another one of these very simplistic arrangements, and like with Trapes, it uses a signature thing that I've noticed a lot with Tremonti's work, which is these interesting finger-picking ideas where he's moving one line while he's also just like using another line as a rhythmic idea, and it shows a lot on this on the first to last. It's maybe the most simplistic arrangement on the album, but it works so well with everything else that's going around it. I love the harmonies, I love the melody, I love the drums that come in at the second half of the song. It does build up at times. It is the most simplistic and the most radio friendly, but it's a beautiful song that doesn't overstay its welcome at all. Then you get As the Silence Becomes Me, which is just another one of these sinister songs that are slower and has some of the best harmonies and the best chorus on the album. It builds well into the bridge and keeps on building until the end. The guitar parts are simplistic, yet beautifully brutal at times, and with everything else around it, it makes for some very interesting ideas. And finally, on the slower end, you get Desolation, which is pretty simplistic at the beginning with just guitar chords, though Tremonti puts some nice touches on the voicings. But what is awesome about this one is that it picks up at the bridge, where the song switches between these clean and distorted guitar, and the clean parts are a little bit more fast-paced and has some, again, finger-picking and some of these interesting melody, counter-melody ideas, and then the sort of guitar comes in. There's a solid solo at the end, and the only thing that kind of diminishes this song is the yeah and no right before the outro, but the outro itself is fun and diabolical. This album is amazing for a lot of different reasons, and it's because of how many different styles they're bringing in, where you get this more thrash metal idea, and then you get this more hard rock idea, and these more sinister things that span throughout the album, but none of them ever being cliched or over the top or uninteresting. There are some songs that are a little bit worse than others, but it's not for lack of trying. From the Sky is a song that has some interesting intro ideas and some interesting riff ideas, and even a really cool bridge, and the drums on here are really cool. The kick pedals in the verse and the backbeat sound on the chorus is really nice, but the chorus is just whoa, and it doesn't build enough for me until that bridge. So it's one of the weaker songs in the album, but it still does a lot. Trust is alright. It doesn't have an interesting verse riff, but I like the breakdown before the chorus, and it does pick up in the second verse. The harmonies in the chorus are very nice, and the bridge gives it a nice change in idea, but it's a little too short to make a difference, and it's probably one of the weaker riffs on the album. But again, not a bad song. Make It Hurt is one of these ones that are a little bit in between. It does have some hard-hitting parts, especially on the chorus and on the second half of the second verse. The bridge has a nice contrast, but again, it doesn't do much that isn't different from the rest of the album. But it's also a very solid song. A lot like Sin, the second to worst song on the album, but again, not a bad song. It has an awesome chorus line and some nice harmonies, but it doesn't do much in terms of the verse work or the bridge work. It's just not memorable when compared to everything else. And then the only one that's kind of just out of place is Found. It's the last song on the album. It's a instrumental, and it doesn't build much until the end. There isn't any guitar solo. There isn't really much in terms of an arrangement. It's just very slow and ethereal, if you will. It does have this nice subtle transition to 7/4 halfway through the song, and it's a good ender, if you will. It's not bad. It's a little bit more electronic and a little bit more simplistic than everything else. And I get that it might be a cue that, hey, we might be doing a sequel album, which if that's the case, that's really going to be awesome, and I'm really excited for that. But after Desolation and the feel of that being the ender, this is kind of weird to have this as an ender. And it's, again, not a bad song if it was teased in any sort of way throughout the album, but it just feels out of place. But the other 13 songs on these albums do something interesting at points. And I would say up until, so my rankings honestly are Dying Machine, and then it's As the Silence Becomes Me, Bringer of War, Take You With Me, The First and Last, Throw Them to the Lions, The Day When Legions Burned, Make It Hurt, Desolation, and Traipse. So those 10 are very, very solid songs. Like, I would listen to those 10 a lot. And even still, Trust, From the Sky, and A Lot Like Sin are much more interesting than a lot of songs I've heard throughout this year. I think that the pacing's very good. I think it builds between that thrash idea and that more solid hard rock idea very well. It's an awesome concept. There's a lot of really cool solos. There's a lot of cool harmonies, a lot of cool drum parts. Overall, it's just an amazing thrash metal concept album. I would say the only thing, if there is something to it, it's a very long CD. It's just over an hour, I want to say, or a little under an hour. And that makes it for a very long CD. And I will say that even though I really like this album, at points I've been just listening to singles or certain songs without going through the whole entire album because I don't have the time to put the commitment into that. It's an amazing album. I say listen to it at least once if you are a metal fan, or in general, if you want to get into see what metal can do, take a listen to this at least once, if not multiple times. This is definitely in my top 10, and this is in rivalry with Miles Kennedy's album, with Father John Misty's, with Family Crest's album for that top spot this year. There's a lot of really good albums this year, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly who takes the crown. But this is right up there. But that is my time. If you like this album, of course, give this video a like. Tell me what you think about this album. Share this with your friends. Subscribe to my channel. And most importantly, just keep on watching my videos. So tomorrow I'm going to be back with another Are You In? This one, not necessarily one of my top 10 just yet, but it's actually pretty close. And I won't give it away just yet, but you'll have to tune in tomorrow for that. So until then, this is The Music Fan signing out. Peace.